Hello, welcome to today's session. Happy National Hedgerow Week. We hope you've had an excellent week celebrating hedgerows across the country. I'm Jess Allen and I'm part of the Tree Council's Science and Research team. And welcome to our talk today, which is all about hedgerow health. And this is a really good topic for this week, as it's not only National Hedgerow Week, but also National Plant Health Week. And we'll talk a little bit more about that soon. So today's talk features three brilliant hedgerow health experts. So we have Lenka Cook from the RHS, John Stokes from the Tree Council. They're both here with me live. And we'll also be hearing a pre-recorded talk by Katie Smirnova from Hedgerows Ireland. Sadly, she couldn't make it today in person, but she sent us a really interesting talk all about fire blight and the work that they're doing on that. Before we get started, we've got a bit of housekeeping to go through. So the session is an hour long. And it will include about 45 minutes of talks from our experts and then 15 minutes of questions and answers. You'll notice that you've got two boxes that you can write in. So you've got a Q&A box and a chat box. So please put your questions in the Q&A box and keep the chat box just to comments and suggestions, and that will help us sort through your questions for later on. All of our sessions are recorded and made available on YouTube. So if you miss anything or you want to go back over anything, you can catch up at any time. Just go to the Tree Council's YouTube channel. We'll also send a link around as well after this event. And yeah, check out our other talks that we've had this week as well, which have been really excellent and interesting. So let's move to the next slide. So if you're new to the Tree Council, we're a national charity that brings everybody together for the love of trees. And we plant and care for trees, and we fund planting as well. With our tree wardens and communities across the country through our community grant schemes. And shout out to any tree wardens out there today. Thanks for coming, and thanks for all the excellent work that you do. We also inspire the next generation of environmentalists through our National Schools programme. And hello to any of our young tree champions or to our teachers out there that are listening. We also use practical science and research to influence national policy and support best practice on trees and the environment. And a lot of this work that we do relates to tree health, and there's lots of information on our website if you have a look at that. And we harness the power of partnership working as well, so to create a healthy tree-filled future. And for example, we run HedgeLink, which is the national group for organisations who are interested in hedgerows in the UK. So please do check out the HedgeLink website. There's loads of information there all about hedgerows, and it's a really excellent resource. So our National Hedgerow Week campaign is part of our Life on the Hedge project, and this is all about raising awareness of how amazing hedgerows are and all that they do for us and for nature. And the project aims to create more better connected hedgerows and to promote better hedgerow management as well. And this work's led by our wonderful colleagues, Annie and Will, and Annie's helping behind the scenes for this talk, so thank you, Annie. And to do this, we're funded by the Trees Call to Action Fund, which is a national fund developed by DEFRA and the Forestry Commission, and it's delivered through the National Lottery Heritage Fund. So as I said, this week's also National Plant Health Week, which is an annual designated week of action to raise public awareness and engagement on how to keep our plants healthy. And so this is a collaborative effort by over 30 organisations in the UK, including the Tree Council, who are all committed to protecting the health of our nation's plants and trees. I just included this graph here, which if you want to, you can find it in the Plant Biosecurity Strategy for Great Britain, as it's a really good illustration of the rise in the number of new pest and disease outbreaks affecting trees since 1971. And so this year, National Plant Health Week is highlighting the importance of being a good plant health citizen. We can all do something to help, whether that's looking out for signs of pest and disease and reporting them, to making sure that we buy plants and trees responsibly. So please do head to their website to find out more. So why does plant health matter for hedgerows? So like any plants, hedgerows can be vulnerable to pests and diseases, and also to other threats like drought or storms that can impact their health, and that affects how well they function both for us and for nature. We need hedgerows to be healthy and thriving to deliver all the fantastic benefits for wildlife and for the climate, for soil health, also for livestock welfare, and that's just to name a few of the benefits that they provide. So it really is in all of our interests to protect them. And as we saw with increased risk of plant pests and diseases, it's more important now than ever to be aware of the risks to hedgerow health and to be informed about how we can all protect them. And so just a couple of examples of why this matters. You can see here in this photo of the hedge on the left, which I'm a bit embarrassed to admit is actually my hedge. You can see it it's in the front garden where I live. And this is what it looks like right now. So I took this photo just a few days ago, and there were hundreds of box moth caterpillars eating the leaves. And as you can see, it's really affected how it looks. And for an urban hedgerow, that might be quite important. So I'm really interested to hear Lenka's talk about box and see if there's anything that I can do about it. And many of us are also sadly familiar with ash dieback. So as you can see in this photo on the right, it's affected many hedgerow trees across the country. And these are really hugely valuable habitats. So it's really important that we are aware of pests and diseases. But it's not all doom and gloom. So I think the good news is that we can all play a part in reducing the risk of pests and diseases, and also in responding to them effectively if they do spread. And sharing knowledge and experience and best practice can help us do that. So today we're going to shine the spotlight on two species that commonly make up hedgerows, so hawthorn and box, and then take time for your questions at the end. So as I said, please do pop them in the Q&A box. So to kick us off, I'm delighted to welcome Lenka Cook, who is a horticultural advisor for the RHS. She's had a lifelong interest in horticulture and gained an RHS diploma before working as a senior gardener at RHS Wisley. And since finishing her BSc in 2006, she's been working as an advisor. And she carried out the original research for the project Assessing Box Alternatives, which we'll hear all about. And she also helps RHS members with gardening questions, contributes to the Garden and Grow Your Own magazines, and also writes and talks for the RHS as well. So a really brilliant guest to have with us, and I'm sure an excellent person to answer some of your questions. So at that point, Lenka, I'll hand over to you. So if you want to turn your camera back on and share your slides.
Good afternoon, so thank you for coming, and always the technical bit. Hopefully it's going to work. Is it sharing?
At the moment I can see the Zoom screen. Yeah, there we go.
Can you see it now?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
So we're talking about box alternative project that I've been involved in. So I started the project, and when I was working for a different department on a secondment, my colleague Jenny Bowden continued with the project. So we have to mention him. She continued with it. So we were thinking why we need to do research into box alternative, because we noticed there was a lot of problems. So with box, it's anything from box blight, and when we thought box blight was bad, so when the box tree caterpillar came. So we know first for both, so just it needs sort of regular control, and so just it's a regular application of pesticides for the box blight and for box tree caterpillar is sort of not really sustainable, and we sort of, as RHS always try to look for alternative ways. In any case, so the amateurs got sort of a more limited availability to controls, including the biological controls. Zentari, which is actually sort of sold, though it's not actually approved for amateur use. So it's basically Bacillus thuringiensis, which is quite effective against caterpillars, but it's not sort of approved for amateur. So for the disrupting of mating of the box tree caterpillars is another product was introduced. And but again, this one is also only approved for professionals. So we decided that we need to learn more about the alternatives. So to start with, if you wanted to know more about both of these problems, we've got excellent information on our website. So how to identify it, and sort of that's the many of the means of controlling it, but the control is not easy and it has to be continuous. So for the box blight, there have been sort of research into sort of breeding sort of new alternatives. So just is the Better Buxus range, which been introduced, however, is not widely available, and compared to buying sort of cuttings of 6 box plants for £10, sort of one plant costs about £25, which is perhaps not really affordable for making a parterre for everybody. And the other problem is the box is still susceptible to the box caterpillar damage. So just we wanted to sort of actually, we looked around and nobody actually did sort of a proper comparison of the various box alternatives. So we wanted to update our web pages because we are inundated with questions. So where not only how to treat it, but so where what to plant instead, because just many people see that the continuous treatment is sort of time consuming, not sustainable, and is in many cases is sort of a losing battle. So we wanted to encourage people to be more adventurous, because if you want to plant a low hedge, so it doesn't necessarily need to be a box. So just you can see some pictures of some alternatives. So like the Lonis ranitida and the rhododendron bloombox, which is actually doing pretty well. So we don't want to be too negative, because we only get to hear about the problems. So there are still box hedges and box parterres which are thriving, and the alternatives are not straightforward. So just box is often still planted and still can be enjoyed. So in the picture there is a walled garden, pictures from a walled garden from near where I live, where the box hedging doesn't seem to be still affected, perhaps because it's more secluded, but it perhaps is a question of time, because my garden in the same time is being badly affected by the box tree caterpillar. So many National Trust gardens still are growing box without a problem, and there is a hope. There is extensive research to blight-resistant cultivars and looking into biological controls, which would allow us still to continue grow box, and enjoy it, because it's the most versatile plant for hedging. So because when we looked at it, so we tried to compare the various alternatives, it becomes very obvious. So there is nothing like a box, because this box can be clipped. It can be clipped for the hedge, topiary, various shapes. It is not too fussy about the soil, or if it's in the shade or in the sun, you can prune it hard to rejuvenate it. So it's got so many pluses. And looking at the alternatives, so we're just none of them will tick all of the boxes. So we were looking at, you can see our wish list, something that would be mostly evergreens, so they can be trimmed to lower hedge. It was not susceptible to many pests or diseases, so we would not go and be backwards. So just is something that would tick at least some of the boxes that the box does. So just we were not just sitting in the office, but we did quite wide research. We contacted the professionals, so within the National Trust, English Heritage, Professional Gardeners Guild. So we did member survey feedback. So we wanted to hear from our members the experiences with box alternatives. So we spoke to our Wooded Trials Committee. So it's a table of horticulture industry experts. So, and we've got if you were to visit, you must have seen it, but we've got a little box alternative display in Wisley Garden. So we decided to actually ask public, so just what they think, and we had this little voting exercise, so to see what actually people prefer. So the results of the visitors' choice in the walled garden were actually quite surprising. So the voting was done in the autumn of 2022 when everything looked tip-top. And the winner, to our surprise, was actually berberis, despite being deciduous, because just people actually love the colorful foliage. So perhaps it would have been sort of a different result in winter when it actually loses its leaves. So in the second place, it was Pittosporums, the College Silver and Warnham Gold in joint second place, but we had a number of other Pittosporums on display. And in the first place was Podocarpus guardsman. So it's a Podocarpus guardsman, and we've got a few other cultivars just there. So low, slow growing conifers with fairly dense growth. They are quite woody, but some of the cultivars that we trial actually formed a nice shape. Just if you haven't seen the display, the plants are trimmed either as a hedge or in this sort of a square column. So to actually try what it looks like if it's sort of a clip, not only as a hedge, but to a different shape as well. So in the survey that we asked our members to complete online, so just as their preferred option, which was not ideal, as it turned out, it was Ilex crenata green hedger. Pittosporum came again second, and Unanimous green spire did well, and so came up actually high in the survey as well. So just on the right hand side, you can see what unfortunately the winter 22-23 did to our display. So 95% of the Pittosporums were extremely badly damaged. So which was very unfortunate, but saved us a trial, because we were thinking about trialing the different option in our gardens, because some of them are much more north, some of them are more south than Wisley. But this proved that Pittosporum was perhaps not the best option. So I wanted to just briefly touch on Ilex crenata, because it seemed to be sort of a great option to start with. But as we sort of heard from our members, as well as from the experiences from the garden, it's is a plant that is actually hard to please. It dislikes shade, dislikes dry, but doesn't like wet. It needs fairly acid soil. So though it looks almost like box and clips really well, it's a difficult plant, and it will not work in many situations. So just the rest where we came across, several problems, anything from like root rot and spots to problem with the pH. So which we like the option is Taxus. We use in our display in the walled garden Taxus baccata repandens. So it's more sort of a low growing spreading Taxus rather than the classic Taxus. However, the ordinary U can be used for parterres as well. It's being trialed. So in many gardens, this is a picture from Western Hall in Scotland, but I've seen it in other gardens, like the Nude in Somerset, where everything is clipped to perfection. And they can be kept quite compact with special treatments. So trying to reduce the root run, but by running a spade along the along the hedge outline, trying to limit the spread of the roots, which makes the plants more compact, so they're preventing them growing too fast. So here are the pictures of the top runners. His Podocarpus, the blue gem. So the rhododendron bloom box is quite a nice little compact rhododendron. If you trim it straight after flowering, you can keep it nice and trim and perhaps very light trim in the autumn. So, and it will still flower. I just got it at home. And Ligustrum santensis sunshine, it proved, very resilient. It survived all the frost. It's got a nice golden foliage. I also have this one at home. So just the only disadvantage, like with many box alternatives, it needs clipping more frequently. So just lots of the box alternatives will need clipping 2 to 3 times a year at least, so to keep it in a nice compact shape. Whilst with box you have got away just clipping it once. So there's a more Podocarpus. So this is a web in the middle is actually just privet hedge. If it's clipped low and regularly, it can do quite well. And here is the Taxus baccata repandens. Is not as dense perhaps as ordinary Taxus baccata, but it's very more compact, and it's hardy, reliably grows with many soil types. Apart from wet soils like NEU, it doesn't like wet soils, but it can be grown in the shade. So just it's a way of looking at the topiary, things like Osmanthus burkhardia. If you come to Wisley, so where this clipped at Wisley, it just is a beautifully cloud pruning. If you live in a more milder climate, perhaps the Misrine africana might be for you, but it's not hardy, though it looks quite neat and tidy. And also just ordinary Laurus nobilis, just the bay tree. If it's a tightly clip, it actually can make nice shapes. Actually, it can be used for hedges. So just this particular ball is around 1.2 meter, 1 to 1.2 meter, tall and wide. So and it's not. So we're not too demanding. This particular plant actually grows on clay, so just it can be grown on many soil types, but they need to be well drained. So just as the other alternatives we looked at, it was Teucrinum lucidris. So it will form a nice flowering hedge. So, and Sarcococca confusa, it might be a good alternative if you need hedging in shade. So again, it's not as dense as box, but it's got advantage. So it flowers in late winter, providing the very early nectar for all the pollinators. And it's got nice glossy green leaves, and we're not too fussy about the soils again, apart from waterlogged soils. So, and here is Olonicera pileata. Again, just this picture is from Wisley, and it will, if it clips at least 2-3 times a year, it can make a nice, neat hedge as well. So, and just to finish off, I just took a few pictures this week at Wisley just to show you, so just how beautifully with the purple berberis looks, and the yellow one on the left. So on the right you've got the golden ligustrum sunshine, and just at the bottom you can see you can use various things for topiary. Just the mushroom thing is actually ilex, clipped ilex, and in front of it, we grow on wire support just various ivy cultivars, and they can be actually used for topiary. So if you wanted more information about the box alternative selections, we'll look on our website. If you put into Google, it's the easiest, RHS, how to choose box alternatives, where we list So everything that you should be thinking about, making sure just you choose the right plan for your particular situation, and RHS box alternatives where you've got the selection, so from height to leaf color, so you can make the right choice. So thank you very much for listening.
Oh, thank you so much, Lenka. That was really interesting. Thank you. And I'm sure there'll be lots of questions for you. So if anyone in the audience has got a question for Lenka, which could be about books or it could be other hedgerow health questions as well, please pop them in the Q&A box for us. It's really interesting to hear that the public surprised you with which one they preferred. So it's always useful to ask people, isn't it?
Yeah, just it was really interesting that people went for the color rather than sort of practical. No, it's practical, but so just the color was the main sort of drawing factor. So say we should have probably repeat the survey in winter when the berries so they didn't look that great. However, so is you cannot have everything. So box was ticking all the boxes, and as well the other alternatives. So you have to make as well a little bit of a compromise so where what you get. So that's why it's very important to think about so what you need, and the pages on how to choose box alternatives can give a really good guidance so how to go about it.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. I'll have to check that out and see what I can do with my hedge as well. Great, thank you. So I'll move us on to our second talk, and I will share my screen in a second. So we're really pleased to be hearing from Katie, who is a campaigns officer at Hedgerows Ireland. So just to introduce her, she studied environmental science at Trinity College Dublin and also holds an MSc in biodiversity conservation and management from the University of Oxford. So Katie and the team at Hedgerows Ireland are leading work on fire blight, which, as you will hear, is a bacterial disease that affects apples and pears. It's particularly relevant to hedgerows because it also affects hawthorn. Katie sadly couldn't make it today due to personal commitments, but we're really grateful that she sent us a recorded talk, which we'll play now. And as I said, if you do have any questions about fire blight or about hedgerow health more broadly, just pop them in the Q&A box for us, and we will pick those up for you for them at the end. So hopefully when I click play, you'll be able to hear Katie and see her slides.
Hi folks, apologies I couldn't be there in real time, but I hope this pre-recorded session will be just as good. And if you have any questions, please do get in touch. Our contact details are there in the top right corner. So my name is Katie Smirnova and I'm the campaigns officer with Hedgerows Ireland, and we're a non-profit working to conserve Ireland's native hedgerows, and we are partnered with HedgeLink in the UK, which is great because we do operate both north and south, so in Northern Ireland and in the Republic. And today I'm here to talk to you about fire blight. So my first question is, what is fire blight? Fire blight is a bacterial disease that was first found in the USA, or first described in the USA in 1780. And then it has eventually spread and was recorded then in England in 1957. So it's been confirmed in many countries around Europe since then. But Ireland currently has a protected zone status for it, which means that it's not widespread here, and I'll go into more on that later on. So under ideal conditions, it can spread very fast, causing severe damage, and the symptoms are pictured here. So they can include bacterial ooze on the blossoms and the infected woody material. And then as it progresses, the bacteria withers the shoots and leaves, turning them into that brownish black colour. And it creates that burnt appearance and then the distinctive curved shepherd's stick at the end of the shoot. It can also be seen as deformities in the bark, so as cankers, which when scraped away reveal a red-orange discoloration. And some of its common hosts are listed there, but it does have over 200 other potential hosts. The main ones would be hawthorn, cotoneaster, apple, pear and rowan. So for us in Hedgerows Ireland, hawthorn would be the primary concern, but commercially it would be the apple and pear hosts that would be the most damaged. And you can learn more about the pathology and the symptoms of fire blight on that website there, gd.eppo.int. So that's the European Plant Protection Organisation. So for some context, fire blight is a protected zone pest in Ireland, and specifically it's a it's a regulated non-quarantine pest. So protected zone pests are those that are present in the EU but not in Ireland despite favourable conditions for them to be established here. And they're ones that would result in an unaccepted economic, social or environmental impact. So that's just that definition there on the top. And in the UK then it was notifiable until 2019, but because it's so widely distributed now, it's only in the Channel Islands, Northern Ireland and the Isle of Man that it's notifiable. And also Jersey is the only listed peat-free area in the UK. So now that we know the symptoms and what the protected zone status means, let's have a chat about how it spreads. So important factors affecting how it spreads locally are temperature and humidity. So these affect how virulent it is. The warmer, more humid weather will increase how virulent the disease is. And the actual process starts from infected material generally being brought into a non-infected area. So natural spread, natural dispersal isn't as common now with fire blight. And then locally, this material can be tough to spot as well visually because the infestation can lie latent, and under suitable conditions, the infection will become active and create that whitish bacterial ooze pictured on the previous slides. So this bacterial ooze can come from the cankers or the blossoms. And the bacteria is then transported to other plants, maybe by insects through pollination. This would be the primary pathway for its spread, but also through heavy rain or through pruning, so through mechanical equipment. And it may move either from blossom to blossom, so flower to flower, via the pollinators, or directly onto the woody material. So this can happen, for example, if there are wounds, those wounds might become directly infected on the shoots. And the blossoms then wilt and die, but they remain attached and stay hanging on, even past when they would usually kind of fall off. And then the bacteria may spread into the fruit later in the season, making it look mummified. And it also stays hanging on to those branches. And the bacteria can then spread down into the shoots and branches themselves. And this causes that wilted shepherd's crook, where the shoot has curled in on itself and has turned brown. And then when you're trying to spot the symptoms of this disease, any inspections must happen during the growing season because this is when it spreads and when the symptoms are visible. So these are some of the top reasons why Hedgerows Ireland views fire blight as a problem. So as I mentioned, it's not widespread in the UK. It's not a notifiable disease there anymore. And if you read kind of some papers, you think, well, it's not as big of a problem in the UK, Ireland here than it is maybe in the USA or parts of Europe that will be more warm, more humid. But these are some of the reasons why we're concerned. So as I mentioned, fire blight is present in many countries, and through tracing the infection, researchers found that the main entry pathways are imported plants. So because natural dispersal only spreads it locally, it's imported plants that are the main pathway for it moving into areas where it's not currently widespread. And in Ireland here, we are importing a lot of plants for our agri-environmental scheme and for other kind of biodiversity planting projects. And I'll touch more on this later on. But that's why we're quite concerned, because those imports are a difficult thing to stop. They're a difficult thing to seize because it requires a lot of changes in how we operate in the kind of governance of trade. So then number 2 is fire blight is well suited to our temperate climate. And although our temperatures aren't as hot as they are in countries where it has been a severe problem, so like the USA with the commercial apple and pear orchards, or parts of Europe that would be a lot warmer in the spring, summertime, saying that, climate change is very much happening, and Ireland is projected to have spring temperatures 0.9 to 1.3 degrees warmer. This is degrees Celsius warmer in 2041 to 2060 in comparison to the period of 1981 to 2000. And in the summer months, this increase, or the projected increase, might go up as far as 1.8 degrees higher. And even in 2024, our National Weather Service projects that our May, June and July temperatures are going to be 0.5 to 1 degrees above normal. So does this mean that fire blight may pose a greater threat in Ireland and the UK in the future due to global warming, and as a result, those warmer temperatures making the disease more virulent? I've asked plant pathologists this question because I haven't seen any, scientific research on it, but I'd be really interested if you do know of any. But based on the pathology of the disease and the fact that global warming is projected to have these temperature increases, the plant pathologists do think that it will make it more of a problem than it is currently today. Because essentially in Ireland and the UK, what we're relying upon is the fact that it's less virulent as a result of the temperatures. But if those temperatures are to change, then, what do we do then? And number 3, there is no treatment. So there's been various chemical treatments tried in the past, and none have been very effective. So therefore, all infected plants must be destroyed in order to prevent spread. And this will have a significant impact on the biodiversity, carbon storage, and ecosystem services of our hedgerows. So then number 4 is over 90% of Ireland's current retail demand for apples is met by imports. And this means there's a lot of room for import substitution with locally grown apples. And in fact, our agricultural body Teagasc has just established a new research orchard with this in mind. However, fire blight can destroy a single orchard in a growing season. And, under ideal conditions, would it not be wise then to prevent this from happening? So if we're investing more into our apple industry, encouraging producers to expand our orchards, would it not be wise to prevent the spread of something that has decimated orchards in other countries in the past? So that's just a side thing. It's not directly related to the hedgerows, but we think it's very important from a domestic agricultural and horticultural point of view. And number 5 then, Hawthorn is most common species in Irish hedgerows, and Ireland's agri-environmental scheme Acres did have the requirement that no more than 85% of hedgerows can be planted with a single species, but then this requirement was changed to a recommendation, i.e. it's likely that more than 85% of newly planted hedgerows will be made of hawthorn, and as a result of the removal of the Irish provenance requirement, it's likely that this will be imported hawthorn. And in regards to hedgerows and spread of fire blight, DEFRA's fact sheet for the disease does say that a major feature of its spread in the UK were the hawthorn hedges. And in Germany, over 800 kilometres of hedgerows were removed due to outbreaks between 1972 and 2000. So that's a significant, stretch of hedgerow there. And if it's to spread in Ireland, the hedgerows are more than likely, based on the examples from England and Germany, going to act as a corridor for fire blight. So apart from being so valuable for pollinators in May and, all of these benefits being lost if all this stretch of hedgerow were to be removed, the hawthorn tree itself holds great cultural significance in Ireland's folklore. And we do think that this should be factored into any risk assessments, as well as the commercial value and the biodiversity value. The cultural value of our landscape should also be an important factor. And number 6, the last one here on the bottom right. So since all infected plants are destroyed, this means that there should be, or there will be, higher labour and equipment costs, both at the removal phase and then when these trees are probably purchased and replanted eventually. So the question there is, will there be a government grant scheme for this, or will landowners rely on the department to kind of alleviate some of this financial cost? Because if not, will all landowners automatically notify the department of suspected symptoms, or will they kind of, stay quiet because of the financial impact that it might have on them if there's no financial assistance for them to actually deal with the problem? So anecdotally, even landowners who have confirmed outbreaks on their sites back in 2023 have experienced very poor communication from the department since then in regards to the plan of action and the financial supports that might be available to them. So this slide then goes through the timeline of fire blight. So it's not the first time it's been in the public mind. So right now we're creating this big deal over fire blight in Hedgerows Ireland as a result of the fact that the agri-environmental scheme has all these changed rules, and so that's creating extra risk. And also the fact that we feel the climate change and global warming situation will become more of a problem in the future. However, as far back as 1986 was when the first fire blight outbreak was recorded in Dublin. And there was a strict eradication programme then, and that's what resulted in the protected zone status for the island. But subsequently, infections in Galway City and in Northern Ireland resulted in those two areas being removed from the protected zone status. So we no longer have all island status. We have those two areas, Galway City and Northern Ireland, excluded from it. And then in 2022 in Dublin, there were 113 trees felled. And in 2023, there were 17 outbreaks recorded. Now, these were just confirmed outbreaks. So as I mentioned, it really depends on landowners to know what the symptoms are, to spot them, and then to notify the department. So we're kind of relying on people's awareness of what fire blight is and knowing what to do about it in regards to who to notify. And then in 2024 on is the question of how do we prevent fire blight spread? So one of the outbreaks was the farmer in County Kerry, Noel O'Connor. He had a piece written there in the Farmer's Journal, and he's experienced no contact from the department since then. So if the people who are the competent authority for fire blight and plant health in Ireland aren't responding, aren't communicating well with the people who actually have outbreaks on their farms, in their garden centres, how can we progress this? How can we move forward? Or will these people be kind of left hanging? We need to figure out what's the next plan of action. So as I mentioned earlier, imported plants are a key entry pathway for fire blight and a lot of diseases as well. And as part of our agri-environmental scheme Acres, an estimated 2,000 kilometres of hedgerows will be planted. And this will be over the next couple of years. So starting in 2023 to kind of running over period of years. So the deadline for planting now has been extended until 2025. And much of this planting will be of hawthorn. So as I mentioned originally, there was the requirement to plant only Irish provenance material. So this is material, that had been grown from seed collected in Ireland. However, in November 2023, due to the demand for the hedgerow planting action, the department removed the specification, and nurseries didn't have adequate stocks of Irish provenance hawthorn due to not being given sufficient notice of the really high demands of the scheme. The trader notice was issued a bit late. It didn't give enough time to scale up production to the level that it needed to be at. And the requirement for the Irish provenance species does still stand for other species on the hedgerow planting list, but not for hawthorn. And hawthorn would be the most commonly planted one. It's very stock proof, it grows well in Ireland, it's pollinator friendly, and it's generally the cheapest one you probably find as well. And then in March, so as I mentioned, the extension for the hedgerow planting was announced up until 2025. And although this extension is positive, in our eyes, it just kind of gives more time for plants to be imported. So ideally, what we'd like to see is a pause on the planting until the supply gap for Irish provenance material can be filled. So in other words, pausing the planting or extending the deadline, but pairing that with reinstating the requirement for Irish provenance material. And this is what we've called for in our open letter. So we encourage you all to sign this. It's a really great opportunity as well to add your UK perspective in the comment or message section. But in our open letter, we're calling for government action to take control of this potential the potential spread of this disease. And the open letter is on our website, hedgerows.ie/fireblight. So pausing the planting and reinstating the Irish provenance requirement was a key ask, but we had a couple of other things as well, and you can read those on our website. And a few people on our social media have asked, why is it that the government is always called upon to take action? Why don't individuals do something? And our answer to this is twofold. So firstly, as I mentioned, DAFM, the Department of Agriculture, is the competent authority for plant health. So ultimately, our national response to the bacteria spread lies with them. And secondly, it was the department as well who decided to suspend the Irish provenance requirement for hawthorn in Acres, which in turn has driven the demand for imported plants that are creating additional risk of fire blight being brought into Ireland. So in our eyes, no planting and a greater focus on hedgerow rejuvenation would have been better than scaling up the planting actions and potentially causing harm in the long run as a result of infection being brought in. So our open letter is at almost at 1,400 signatures, and I invite you all to go on and sign it after this webinar. So saying that, we do think that individual action is still important, and some things that we can all do is buy trees of local provenance. So some of the examples I've listed here are Irish suppliers, but I recommend you search for your own local nurseries in the UK as well. And then disinfecting your tools is really important. So whether hedge laying or pruning, this is a really simple way to stop the spread of diseases, not just fire blight. And then species diversity is another great way to boost biodiversity to start with, and also means that they're less likely to all be affected by the same disease. And number 4 then is to learn the symptoms of the diseases and know which agency you need to notify. So in Ireland, this is the Department of Agriculture's Horticultural Division, and the email is plantandpests@agriculture.gov.ie. And then in the UK, you can find the contact details on the DEFRA Plant Health portal. So I think it's planthealthportal.defra.gov.uk. So you can pop on there and find out who you need to notify when you spot symptoms of suspected diseases. And that's all for me. Thanks for listening. I do encourage you all to sign the open letter and get in touch if you have any other insights. I'd be really interested in hearing your experiences with fire blight in the UK and what you've done to manage it, or what sort of impact you think it has had in your area. So that's all. Thanks and bye for now.
So a huge thank you to Katie for preparing that talk for us. I'm sure you'll agree that was a really important topic for us all to hear about. It's something we haven't talked particularly much about in the UK in recent years, but if you'd like to support their campaign, please do check out Hedgerow Ireland's website. And in the UK, if you spot a tree health problem that you're concerned about at all, please report it to Tree Alert. So that helps to identify pests and diseases, make sure that they're monitored, and also make sure that there can be a suitable response as well. So hopefully we can put the link to Tree Alert in the chat, and it's helpful to have a look at that before you head out and about, so you can see what type of information they like you to provide. So now I'll invite Lenka and John both to join me to tackle some of your questions. Great, thank you. Hi, John.
Hello.
So the first question from David, would a mixed hedge of the alternatives to take advantage of the different colours of box be recommended? So I guess it's taking a combination of the alternatives. Lenka, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Sorry, just could you repeat the question? So
yeah, of course. So I think it's is it worthwhile to use a combination of the alternatives to box in one hedge?
Yeah, it can be sort of a 4 hedges. It might work, but if you wanted it to sort of plant it like for low parterre, or something so that requires all the plants to have a similar growth rate, that sort of might be sort of not as suitable, because it's quite popular. I've seen it lots of France. They're sort of mixing lots of different hedging plants. You've got a great color effect, but it just doesn't give sort of like this clean line. But if you are very happy for they're more relaxed hedging, by all means, so that it could look very good. You've got different colors, but if you are looking for more formal hedge alternative, so for parterre or for hedging parts or surrounding borders, so it may be less so. It would be more difficult to maintain it. So just I see it adversely. So just you can, because we've got many different plants on display. So just the maintenance have to be sort of adjusted. Some of them get clipped. Things like the Podocarpus, probably once, max twice a year. With things like with the Pittosporums, or things like with the Loniceras, just you need to clip them so they're 2-3 times a year, and sometimes even more if the growing conditions are particularly good. If the summer weather is mild, you get a good autumn, and you get plenty of moisture. So just it would work with some situation and less well in others.
Okay, so it all depends on what you want from your hedge and how much you're prepared to
absolutely.
maintain
That
it.
certainly the color is great. I love it. I love color, but as I say, it depends what you want to achieve.
Okay, great answer. Thank you. Hope that helps, David. And so maybe a question about fire blight. So how problematic is fire blight in the UK at the moment? Yep, go ahead.
Jess, sorry, my line's a bit unstable today, but just to build on where Lincoln was a second ago, diversity of box types is good, but as we heard from our colleague in Ireland, diversity in our hedgerows writ large matters, and an over preponderance of any one species like Hawthorn, as we have quite a lot here. If a disease were to get hold, then we would lose, very large quantities of hedge due to fire blight. So it's not just box hedges that need thinking about in terms of diversity. It's all hedges that we need to think about, whether we're planting them in gardens or parks or streets or gardens. A bit of diversity will definitely shake up the mix and ensure that no pest or disease gets hold of it and kills the whole lot in one go.
Yes, monoculture is always asking for problems.
Always.
Yeah, very good advice there, John. Thank you. So coming back to fire blight, so obviously it sounds like a really concerning problem. So I wondered if John and Lenka, maybe starting with John, whether you can comment on how widespread it is in the UK in your experience, how worried we should be.
So historically, fire blight was always something that was out there. It was always something that's been an issue. And in fact, I looked to my left into the garden and I have a cherry tree that is currently dying of fire blight. So it has always been something that's been there and been a problem. I think the key to what we were hearing about, what they're concerned about in Ireland, is the fact that it's changing. It might change with climatic conditions. And as Katie said, if there's a rise in temperature in Ireland, then it may become more of a problem. And the thing that's really difficult to deal with in a hedgerow in the countryside is that if you've got fire blight in your garden, then you can deal with it by pruning it out. But as was said on the presentation, you have to clean your tools every time between the cuts so that you don't spread it into other bits of the tree. Problem if you're flailing a hedge is that every time you flail it, you will be spreading the fire blight further and further down the hedge, because with all the will in the world, it's going to be extremely difficult to sterilize a flail. And so once it gets hold in a hedge, it could spread quite quickly. So it is not currently a major problem, but it is the one that keeps me awake at night worrying about things, because if it were to ever get hold and become and start to spread, it could lay waste to large quantities of hedgerow. So I think Katie's advice was really important. Everybody needs to be aware of what fire blight looks like. Look at the symptoms documents that you've seen that were posted. Look at anything you can find and be aware that it could be out there. But it's not the easiest thing to spot, even with the symptoms, because I had a cherry tree down on the beach the other day, cherry plum down on the beach the other day, and I thought at first sight it looked like fire blight. I thought, oh dear, as we've got a workshop on this on Friday, it's really... And then I did a double take and looked around and realised that it was actually frost damage. And I haven't seen frost damage on young leaves for a very long time. But the appearance of frost damage and fire blight can be quite similar in terms of the foliage. So just be a touch careful, folks. If you do have a look at stuff and you think after this, I've got fire blight, just look also at other species that aren't rosaceae and make sure that you don't have frost damage in your area. But if you do spot it, then definitely report it through Tree Alert as you put in the chat.
Great, thank you, John. And Lenka, is it something that you've come across for
Yeah,
gardeners
just
as well?
we do get sort of inquiries from our members about Fire-Bright. I wouldn't say it's just one of our major ones, but definitely we get it. But as John said, just it can be easily mistaken for other things like blossom wilt. So where the where flower branches were die back, and which is actually the same pathogen that causes brown rot in fruit, and it can look sort of a bit similar. So you have just the identification. So it's important you are not condemning every tree. So you should look at the resources recommended. If you are an RHS member, so we do pest and disease identification for our members. So I would encourage to use for the members our online service. So with the My RHS account and send us photos. They will be evaluated by the pathology department, and if they suspect it, they might ask for sample. But unfortunately, just this is a service for the members. But they are DEFRA and other organizations. I'm sure they will help. And the hygiene is so important in the garden. It's not only fire blight. It's silverleaf, bacterial canker. So just cleaning your tools. So just it makes them last longer, and it will definitely reduce the spread of disease. Same with if you've got box blight. So just it's also they often spread on pruning tools. So on your gloves, on your boots, because just the spores get on it, and just you go to another part of the hedge which didn't have it, and you will spread it yourself. So hygiene in the garden is very important.
Okay, that's great advice.
And I know that one of the key, Jess, I know that one of the key focuses for the DEFRA for this year's National Plant Health Week was to get people to understand that we all need to be good plant health citizens. We all need to be aware of these issues. And I know you introduced that it was Plant Health Week at the beginning, Jess, but that appreciation that plants provide so much to society, that they are an integral part of our landscape and of our society, and just becoming aware that there are issues and there are problems, and being that good plant health citizen is a really, really important part of the future, because we've got to try and manage these things in a better way going forward, and that means we've all got to be aware.
Yeah, exactly. And a little bit of knowledge is really useful, isn't it? So we can all be the eyes out on the ground looking for tree health problems, and the important thing is that we have the knowledge to know what to do next, so to report it. And as Lenka said, don't write things off straight away. So we probably do need to wrap up now because we're at 2 o'clock. But thank you so much, Lenka, for joining us, and thank you, John, as well, and for all your great advice. And thanks for everyone listening. We hope that you've enjoyed the session and found it useful. And as we said, importantly, feel that you're a bit better armed with some knowledge about fire blight and the challenges for box as well. So thanks for joining us. We hope you have a lovely weekend, and we'll see you somewhere soon. Bye for now.